With the release of the Kennedy assassination files, many in the media are focusing on the who killed Kennedy.
Why did it take 62 years for the FBI to find this new tranche of documents?
The FBI says it has new information about one of the United States' biggest mysteries. The Bureau says it has found 2,400 new records related to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. This discovery comes as federal agencies work to comply with President Trump's executive order to release thousands of classified files.
All of a sudden, we have 2,400 more, so we're talking now about maybe 5,500 documents altogether. But we will learn, I think, possibly, valuable information, for example, about Lee Harvey Oswald's whereabouts in the 2 months or so prior to Dallas, and notably in Mexico City. What was he doing there? Who did he meet with? We know some of that. There could be more in these documents about Oswald.
But they are purposely not focusing on the why they killed Kennedy, because if they cover that part, you would realize that the reason why you're having credit problems today or financial problems today is tied into why they assassinated JFK.
Do you know the U.S. Mint says it costs 3.7 pennies to create and distribute a single penny? That's why President Trump told the Treasury Secretary to stop making pennies altogether. The U.S. Mint reported losing $85 million, making 3 billion pennies last year. Americans with lower incomes could be affected by this change since they're more reliant on cash transactions. And they say retailers could use this as an opportunity to round prices up instead of down.
And now with talks of changing the U.S. currency and canceling the FDIC.
Ms. Owen, Sheila Bair, the former Republican FDIC chair, recently said that there is strong consumer confidence in the FDIC brand and that customers are, quote, comforted by the FDIC insured sign on their doors. Would your customers agree with that?
Well, I think it's very important to have it on our doors, yes.
Excellent. She said that because in direct response to reports that Trump's advisors and members of this so-called Doge team are talking about ways to reform or completely eliminate the FDIC. Number two, when you get a customer who comes in who asks for a loan from your bank and you're evaluating whether or not you want to issue a loan, what the interest rates are you charge, do you look at their payment history with their other vendors, debt and otherwise?
Yes, we work up a cash flow because we want to know that they can adequately service the loan that they're
and just to be clear, if they have a history of non-payment or late payment, that's going to be a negative impact on their credit score, right?
Yes.
We saw the FDIC bail out banks that all of a sudden had a squeeze because they had higher treasury rates, right?
Correct.
Look, this hearing is called Making Community Banks Great Again. Because if I look back in history and I say, when was there a point when we did not have an independent Fed? When was there a point when we didn't have an FDIC protecting runs on the banks? When was there a point when the robber barons were in charge of our government? When was there a point where the federal government refused to enforce the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the Constitution passed under Reconstruction in order to make sure that we actually honor our protection, our constitutional obligation to equal protection? I'm going back to the 1890s. That was an era where we had a run on the banks, a recession darn near every 4 or 5 years. Of course, that led to the Great Depression afterwards. Is that the era we're going back to?
It leads us to the question, is cash over and is your money safe? And the reason why one of our most popular presidents was assassinated is the reason why you need more than ever to improve your credit score today. JFK many a time would talk about this undercurrent working against the American people and how he intended to stand against it.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweigh the dangers which are cited to justify it, will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations.
What JFK was talking about in these speeches is a world power still standing today, controlling every part of our life. Now, where this came to be and birthed from was a little island off of the coast of Georgia, known as Jekyll Island. And in 1910, this is where a secret meeting was held by some of the richest bankers in the United States at the time. Now, the home that this idea was birthed in is believed to be William Rockefeller. And what's interesting of his home, he built his home over an altar where the natives is alleged to have human sacrifices. And right in that living room is where they came up with the idea of the central banking system, because these bankers, along with JP Morgan being the leader, they wanted a way that they can secure the banking interest for them and their families. And this would be on the backs of the taxpayers of the United States. And at this secret meeting, the central bank was formed. Now, what is a central bank? Now, a central bank is a bank that produces the currency of a whole nation. The central bank doesn't just supply that government with money, it actually loans that government money with an interest rate attached to it. So what that means, every dollar that produced by the central bank has attached to it interest that needs to be paid back. So this is virtually not cash, it's credit. So it's creating debt. And how does a government pay off debt when a government doesn't have any industry? The only industry the government has is taxing you. So this is nothing but a credit card. Every time they produce this, it's an interest rate that needs to be paid back. So when many people say cash is king, that is not true. Cash is nothing but credit.
At the top of any US dollar bill, you'll see this. That's because even though the bill may have come from the Treasury, the Federal Reserve is who actually distributes it.
They're the ones that's charged with managing the currency in circulation in our economy.
In other words, they can kind of print money.
Money printer go brr, right? That was a popular meme in 2020 when the Fed was creating money out of thin air.
The Federal Reserve is in many ways in charge of the US economy. As a former chairman once said, they're the economy's chaperone who has ordered the punch bowl removed just when the party was really warming up.
So they had a secret meeting to call in other bankers. In the court of public opinion, many of the citizens would have resisted this idea. And they left from Bayonne, New Jersey, hiding their identity, and where they would be able to have power and control. And they even put their money together to put into place that would have these powers without being voted in or elected. And they were implemental to also get elected Woodrow Wilson, who actually instated the Fed under his administration, creating a monopoly. This is where we get the board game Monopoly from. The photo of the Monopoly man is actually JP Morgan Chase. And this is what Kennedy was fighting. Just like in Monopoly, you start off by getting that $200 from the banker, which is JP Morgan Chase in that example. And as you go around the board, if you are a person that only deal with that cash and do not invest in buying land and developing it, or buying the light company or the train company, after a while, as people start to develop, if you do not invest into something to make you money, you'll be out of the game. So if you keep working for this and they're printing it faster than you can work for it, you're never getting out of this hole. This is why you need to leverage your credit to actually get cash flowing assets like a real estate property that somebody rents for you. And now they're paying you every month and you're growing in wealth as they print the money because the value of the house go up, and you're getting cash every month without you physically working for it. That's why now is more important than ever to clean up your credit. And with my elite credit system, users like my user Sean went from a 612 credit score all the way up to a 770 credit score in a matter of 6 months. And Sean was able to go to an 803 credit score and went through my business credit program. And now he has business credit for his business. I'll leave that link below. But right now, you cannot outwork this inflation. You need to out-strategize it, because this is why you guys are constantly struggling financially and having trouble credit, because it is a scheme in the system to make you a permanent slave. Now, JFK was aware of this, and then this is why he passed Executive Order 1110.
On June 4th, 1963, US President John F. Kennedy issued Executive Order 11110, authorizing the Secretary of the Treasury to issue silver certificates. This was the first of a series of moves to take control of US money back from the Federal Reserve by giving greater power to the Treasury. Just 5 months later, on November 22nd, 1963, John F. Kennedy was assassinated.
It was bypassing the Federal Reserve. So what does that mean? instead of having them print this where the taxpayer now had to pay back this interest, Kennedy made their own currency backed by silver. And now the Federal Reserve no longer got that interest, meaning it did not keep us perpetually in debt. As he kept printing as our nation currency with these silver certificates, putting it in circulation, the less dependent you were going to be on the Fed. And that perpetual cycle of that interest by the taxpayer would have less and less needed to be paid, because that silver certificate in that silver note was backed by the US silver. And this is actual currency. And then we could have got out of that cycle of debt, putting you and me and our kids further and further in this debt that needed to be paid back to the government, where they're taxing us on everything. So this is why Kennedy actually was assassinated. And this is why I personally trade out every month a portion of this cash for this silver. This silver dollar is equal in value of what they're saying as the US currency. But this silver dollar actually costs 38 of these printed dollars, because one of these are actually real money, meaning a real store of value. And so when these wealthy people can't control that, now they have to stop printing, and they don't get that advantage of their wealth going up. As they print and I hold silver, the value of this silver goes up. And as you can see, it far surpassed this printed dollar. They're supposed to be equal. But why is it taking 38 of these to equal one silver dollar? Because this is actual, a real metal with value and utility, making EV, batteries, solar panels, and a lot of your electronics run off of silver. And the reason why you don't learn this in school, because one of the creators and the wealthy family that created the school system also helped create the Fed, which is the Rockefeller family. And the modern day school system today is set up like a factory. This is why anytime a bell rings, you go to your location. And in order for you to get a good grade, you either pass or fail. And that is set up on a system for a factory. So this is why they don't teach you about credit or the monetary system, because it is made for you to not have knowledge on how the system works. And even your institutions of higher education, even with the talented 10th and W.E.B. Du Bois, a lot of that funding for those historical Black colleges came from the Rockefellers, and why Spelman College is named after a Rockefeller to this day. Now, hopefully this information was helpful. If you have any questions, you can leave it in the comment section. But if you have more detailed questions for me, you can go directly to my website, and all your questions go directly to my cell phone. I hope to see you guys in the next video. Stay tuned.